Everybody loves a good listicle, and I gotta tell you that the listicle that I love most is 5 Ways to Make Your Protagonist More Likable. I like it because it's the single most cowardly advice that anybody can ever give. Why are you trying to make your characters likable? And what does likable even mean? I got the idea for this video today because I just watched the Netflix adaptation of The Hunting Wives, which, for my mostly male audience, I regret to inform you, this is not male fiction, okay? This is totally for the ladies. The book that it's based on is for chicks, and the Netflix, we'll call it a loose adaptation. That is also for chicks. Now, Netflix has a really bad reputation for what it does to the source material, but in this instance, it did something right. And what it did right was that it made the characters less likable, and also it changed the murderer. So this is women's fiction, yes, but it's also kind of like a murder mystery thriller with a touch of bisexual hedonism going on there. Go girls. Now, I'm so sorry to spoil this for you, but in the original book, the killer ended up being the preacher's wife. And this goes along with the trope of, oh, well, of course, she's the one who did it, you know, hypocritical Christian. One, that plot point is way overdone, and it's basically the plot of every single Ryan Murphy show. But also, it's boring. It's just boring. Even if you were the first one to ever do it, it's boring. So what? Oh, the likable person turned out to flip their lid over something that their son did with their weird boy-mom relationship. Instead, what the show asked us to do was to still like the murderer and our protagonist, even though they were kind of not great people in general. Instead of excusing it like, oh, well, they're empowered. Look at them doing these awful things, but they're still good. No, they said, look, absolutely not. Our main girl is flawed. She's got problems. She's absolutely not likable. And our murderer, obviously, is not likable at all. But oh my God, she's sexy and charming. So it's kind of like that meme, I can fix her. And that's why it's interesting. And that's why that show shot to the top of the charts. Now, you might be thinking it's the sex appeal, but I promise you that the majority of the females just lapping this up are not bisexual or gay. They're probably straight girls. But the show did something that the book really didn't, and it allowed the characters to tell the truth. Some of those truths are uncomfortable, and some of those truths fly in the face of the hero's journey, kind of wholesome storytelling that we talk about promoting a lot on this channel. Now, you might be stepping back and saying, okay, Kristen, here's where I leave you. Because if you're going to go on a full-throated promotion of smut, then I'm not coming with you. It's okay. That's not what we're doing here today at all. This isn't even really genre specific. This is about the characters that you write, whether you are writing a romance, whether you're writing a high fantasy, or whether you're writing a hard-boiled pulp detective. This is about avoiding sanitized fiction. This is about avoiding listening to those agents who say, you know, could you just make this character a little less political? Or I just think that this main character would work a lot better if maybe that they were in a polyamorous relationship. And I just think that that would be a lot more likable and a lot more relatable. Sanitizing your characters and sanitizing your stories to make the characters just like me is a good way to neuter your storytelling. And today we're going to talk about what that looks like, making characters who tell the truth, even if it's unpleasant truth, and writing good, perhaps unlikable characters that resonate with people and say something important, even if that something important doesn't exactly go nicely with the happily ever after. Hello, you writing rebels. I'm Kristen McTiernan, here to talk about building your own indie signal and getting your voice out there in whatever medium you work best in. Publishing's risk aversion is part of the reason why we're seeing this repulsive slop epidemic. Yes, we talk about romantasy quite a bit and how the feminization of the fiction market is kind of making everything bland and boring, but it's not just feminine interests, because as you well know, feminine interests sometimes skew into the dark and disordered. So it's not just that, it's risk aversion and keeping everything, including the fictionalized conflicts, safe. Now, what do I mean by safe? YouTuber The Second Story recently did an outstanding video talking about how modern villains are pitiful and they're impotent. And it's kind of the idea of safe evil, which is almost but not quite as disgusting as safe horny, where it's okay to have a muscle mommy squeezing some twink around the neck, but it's not okay to have a tall, muscular, masculine man going on and on about what he would like to do to the woman who is the object of his desire. Safe Horny has been wreaking havoc across all media, pushing alternative lifestyles and denigrating normal relations between males and females. And really, Safe Evil is doing the same thing when it comes to fictionalized conflict and really what the nature of evil is. Safe Evil is Killmonger from Black Panther. Well, I have been egregiously wronged. Don't you feel bad for me? This throne should be mine. So all of this horrendous behavior that I'm undergoing, including choking Auntie, that's all fine. That's fine because I have been wronged, and also my people historically have been wronged. And even though you are also of that same ethnic group, you're bad too, and you're being that ethnic group wrongly. I'm doing it rightly. I mean, for fuck's sake. Thanos and the Avengers Endgame series kind of got this same criticism as well. I would say that it's less applicable to him. These Safe Evil villains is part of the sanitization process. We don't want to say that anybody was actually born evil. We don't want to actually say that evil even really truly exists. When people misbehave, it's the system that failed them. A concept that, frankly, I find disgusting. Now, before I get too off into the weeds as if this is somehow a left-leaning invention, that this was something that the commies did to us, Christian conservatives, I'm afraid you have a lot to answer for too. Now, a couple of years ago, I made a video, which I made the horrible decision of doing in my car with no makeup on right before I went in for a facial. It was never again. But it was basically all about all of the ways that Christian fiction fails its audience. It makes these schmaltzy, disgusting lead characters who are like, oh, I'm such a good Christian, and I shall make all the correct decisions and be loving and kind, while those evil atheists are just so mean to me for no reason and act like mustache-twirling cartoon characters. And also the Muslims, too. They're actually the worst. If you've ever seen the movie God's Not Dead, like any of them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is inexcusable. It is preposterous. And even if you have, a major studio behind you like Angel Studios, if you pump this shit out, you are hurting the culture, okay? That's just what you're doing. If you grew up in youth group being shown these made for youth group television, like it didn't air on proper TV. It was a VHS and they showed it to you when you were in youth group or CCD or whatever the hell. And it twisted your perception of certain groups of people. It certainly twisted your perception of what real life is and what real conflict should look like. I have talked about this ad nauseum, and whether that's talking about how to deal with a school bully. Well, have you tried talking to him, champ? Says every sitcom from the 80s and 90s. Sanitized fiction sets up young people in particular, but also grown people, into thinking that the world works a certain way when actually it doesn't. Because I've said this multiple times, our culture, our morality, and the way we see the world is infinitely more impacted by story than it is by what our pastor tells us, by what our teacher tells us, and certainly by what that jackwagon on Fox News tells us. Not all of you read my Substack. However, I am happy to announce that I have collected all of my best performing essays about this very subject, the importance of fiction and how it influences our morality, our religion, and our culture, in Pop Culture Heretic, Morality Through a Screen. It is now available on Amazon and all major retailers. I'm also selling the ebook on my own store, so if you want a DRM-free copy, you can get that from my own. If you want a paperback, that is available exclusively through Amazon, and I have to say, you guys, the paperback, I really blew the roof off with the formatting. It's totally beautiful. I highly recommend it. So if you are not a person who likes to read online, but you still want to read these essays, you can head on over to Amazon and pick yourself up a copy in your preferred format. The major failing of sanitized fiction is the neat splitting of people into good people versus bad people and completely ignoring the possibility that one can become the other. Now, bad people who are purely evil, who are just vicious, generally speaking, a reforming of a person like that takes a whole movie's worth of hardship and self-discovery and coming to Jesus moments. It's not an easy fix, is what I'm saying. And perhaps people don't want to face that it's a whole lot easier for a good person, or at least a well-behaved person, to turn into a very nasty person. And it doesn't take nearly as much influence or bad things happening to them for them to turn that way. This kind of sanitized fiction works pretty well when we're talking about children's fiction. The reason that fiction, especially in recent years, has been segregated by age, where we have children's picture books, children's chaptered books, middle grade books, which is relatively new. I don't think they had those when I was a kid. Young adult books. Now they have new adult books. I don't even really... What is that? I don't know. And then properly adult novels. And the reason for this categorization is because it should be a sequential introduction of what exactly the world is like, told to you through stories, shown to you through different characters. But with popular fiction and what's on the shelves, unfortunately, what the publishers have been doing is playing it safe. They want to sterilize everything. They want to put people into character categories. They want individual readers to see themselves. They want them to feel seen. So instead of creating a fully formed person, whether it's a protagonist or whether it's an antagonist, they're flattening everything. And this is even without the intervention of AI. These are humans creating these flat, lifeless characters who do nothing, say nothing, believe nothing, but just nod and smile. This is another show that I know for a fact that no one in my audience has watched, but you have heard of it. Sex and the City aired many, many years ago. It went off the air, and then Sarah Jessica Parker revived it in a reboot called And Just Like That. I didn't watch either of these shows. However, I am a compulsive video essay watcher, and so I happen to know one thing that happened in the reboot was this great flattening. In the original series, these four repulsive, slutty, materialistic women who were friends with each other, they fought with each other. They had differing opinions. They challenged one another. Carrie, in particular, who is the main Sarah Jessica Parker character, was disgusting and repulsive and a cheater and just felt like consequences shouldn't happen to her. That wasn't just the audience feeling that and saying that. Her friends on the show told her that too, castigating her for her horrendous behavior for some of her boyfriends, and also castigating her for going back to Big multiple times, who was also a terrible person. None of that happened in the reboot. So in the reboot, we have these characters behaving horrendously. And when I say horrendously, I mean one of the characters leaving her longtime loving husband because he's losing his hearing in his old age. Oh, he's so old, he's not fun, I'm not fulfilled. And she leaves him for a disgusting, quote-unquote, stand-up comic who is of the same sex and identifies as non-binary. And this person was so repulsive that even the audience was turned off. But all of the friends in the show were like, oh, great, leaving your husband and the father of your children and wounding him and humiliating him. You live your truth, girl. Watching another character down bottle after booze. Oh, okay, a little worried, but it's fine. The reason? All of this to avoid being problematic. All of this to avoid being judgy. All of this to enforce firm boundaries. They did the same thing with the reboot of Gossip Girl. What's that? You didn't know they rebooted Gossip Girl? Of course you didn't. Do you know why you didn't know that? Because I will not be convinced that this show was not written by ChatGPT. I'm not joking with you. 100% that script was written by AI. And I'm talking like original ChatGPT. What it was, hello, I would like everyone to know that there is a multitude of genders, and we will accept all of them, because this spectrum is a spectrum of love. The dialogue was so bad, and every single verbal exchange on that show was just to talk about how not problematic anybody was going to be, and how important it was to hold the wealthy children accountable because they have privilege. I think a lot of times people misunderstand that when you say get woke, go broke, people think that we're saying, oh, well, actually, there's not very many people of hard left ideology. Oh, it's just a very vocal minority. That's not what that means, okay? What it means is that even that very vocal minority, and by the way, they're not really a minority, it's fully half, I'm going to go ahead and say, they don't like that shit either, okay? Why would they? They know what a good story is too. They know what good dialogue sounds like. A lot of times we hate to say this, but if we're just being honest, most artistic people, most writers, most actors, people in the arts, they tend to lean left. That's how they tend to be. So dare I say, maybe they're even better at it than we are? Don't tell them I said that. They hate this shit too. So who is it for? It's for the corporations. That's who it's for. Well, this will, perhaps not be a smash hit, but we'll get our ROI, and then we can make 2 sequels of more slop, and the little piggies will eat it out at the trough, and then our shareholders will be happy. Yeah, it's so corporatized and disgusting. Okay, and the reaction that you, as a writer or an aspiring writer, should feel when someone tells you to make a character more likable or tells you that your story is problematic, it should be anger. It should be disgust, because what they're trying to do is flatten and defang your story so that it says nothing at all. Your readers, regardless of their ideological bent, regardless of where they're from, they know these fundamental truths, and they know what a good story is too, because we are humans and our brains are wired for story. So why aren't you giving it to them? Because you want to make the gatekeepers happy, because you want to make that agent happy. They said they would pick up your thing if only that you made this one little inconsequential change. It's just a small change, and they'll be able to sell it. Really, just make this one change, bro. And maybe it is a small change, and maybe you feel like it's worth it. Or maybe you know that it will completely gut your story and ruin it, but you're so afraid of marketing your work yourself that you just make that compromise and you add to the slop pile. Is that why you became a writer? I know it's not why I did. Trust your readers to handle complexity, and let your characters be wrong and face real costs. Let them be fucking unlikable. Not for too long, perhaps, that gets old, but let them be little shits every now and again. I think you'll find your story does better for it. So that's all I have for this week. If you would like to pick up a copy of Pop Culture Heretic, you will find a link in the description. I hope that you enjoy it. So until next week, take care and write something important.